Imagine that this is your home. It's May 2015. In the last month, Nepal has been hit by 2 devastating earthquakes. Every single house in your village is similarly destroyed, along with all of the schools, health facilities, and government buildings. Around 9,000 people have been killed, and 600,000 families are struggling with similar levels of destruction. The disaster has had a leveling effect in some ways. Rich and poor, high and low caste, educated and not, everyone is scrambling to survive. This is the village that I have been working in as an anthropologist for over 20 years. The arrow that you see on this UN infographic on the map shows you the epicenter of the second earthquake, right beneath the houses of the families with whom I've long lived. Fast forward to the present now. In spring 2018, almost 3 years after these great earthquakes, the landscape looks radically different. It's not because everything has been rebuilt just as it was. Instead, the world is in an ongoing state of reconstruction. Bulldozers and steel rebar, bricks and concrete, aluminum sheeting, and electrical wire are scattered across the hillsides. Little is complete. Instead, everything seems to be in a constant state of becoming and unbecoming, imagining and reimagining. There is a new community building that is almost completed, but suffers from a dangerous exposed slope behind it. A school that is still in use despite its lack of walls. A temple that has been shored up by scaffolding, but is not yet secure enough to house its deities again. In the meantime, ever larger numbers of young people, especially men, but not only, have left for migrant labor abroad in the Gulf states, Malaysia, and India, while others have moved to the nearest city center in the district headquarters. For all of these reasons, it's not just the built environment that is changing in the wake of the earthquakes, but entire social worlds as well. Over the last 3 years, each family has had access to a different combination of resources, including government subsidies, remittances from family members working abroad, donations from international and national NGOs, and their own ingenuity, skills, and labor. These have resulted in a range of different reconstruction styles for individual households. Although donors pledged $4.4 billion for reconstruction back in June 2015, by the end of 2017, less than 11% of homes had been fully rebuilt. My current research seeks to understand the social effects of such disasters, particularly in contexts like Nepal that have also experienced political upheaval and transformation. The country saw the end of a decade-long conflict between Maoist and state forces in 2006 and a new constitution in 2015. In this context, can we understand post-conflict, post-disaster reconstruction as a positive opportunity for social transformation? This idea builds upon the notion of building back better, but extends that beyond the built form to think more about building inclusive and equitable social structures as well through the process of recovery after a disaster. These questions that I'm asking in Nepal build upon lessons learned from earlier disasters in places like Haiti, Gujarat, Kashmir, and Sri Lanka. But they're also relevant to other sites of disaster today, including those we've witnessed recently in the Americas, like storms in the American South and the Caribbean, wildfires and mudslides in Canada and California. As should be clear to all of us by now, the challenges of governance and inequitable resource distribution that make disaster recovery difficult are not exclusive to the so-called developing world. My work in Nepal aims to contribute knowledge that's valuable to communities there, but can also provide a framework for thinking about these issues elsewhere in the world. Through a partnership development grant funded by Canada's Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada, I hope to chart a path for multidisciplinary collaboration across the social and applied sciences to address these challenges of reconstruction in an integrated manner. The project is called Expertise, Labor, and Mobility in Nepal's Post-Conflict, Post-Disaster Reconstruction. As a team, we began our work in mid-2017 and are fortunate to have funding for 3 years. Our multidisciplinary team brings together scholars from fields as diverse as anthropology, art history, economics, engineering, geography, law, planning, political science, and religious studies, as well as Nepali community organizations here in Canada and in Nepal. We also want to build connections with organizations working to ensure earthquake safety and anticipate the challenges of a disaster here in BC. What is our plan to embrace such challenges here at home? What will we do when our big one hits? Here in Vancouver, my own daughter's school is slated for what is called a seismic replacement. But this project and those at many other BC schools have been under discussion and subject to political ebbs and flows for more than a decade. We need to do a lot more, both for ourselves and for our children, as well as for the people of Nepal. By investing in them and in this research, we create unexpected returns by revealing both the complexities that communities face in the wake of a disaster, but also the opportunities that can open up for positive transformation in such moments. From one perspective, reconstruction on a mass scale, such as is necessary in Nepal, is a technical challenge, especially given the country's rugged mountain terrain and relatively low incomes. But from another perspective, all of the technical skills and financial support in the world will have little impact unless the social and political dimensions of such a large-scale project are understood. This is especially the case in a place like Nepal, where the majority of families most severely affected by the earthquake belong to historically marginalized communities, Indigenous and low-caste backgrounds. Reconstruction in such a context becomes a process of negotiation between Indigenous knowledge about building design, functionality, and aesthetics, and technical expertise brought into communities by outsiders. This has certainly been the case in Nepal, where the government deployed 3,000 engineers to oversee the reconstruction process in rural areas. They were charged with ensuring that all householders receiving government subsidies complied with one of several blueprint designs for earthquake-resistant houses. But those designs were developed without full consultation and overlooked several basic principles of local design, providing space for animals on the first floor, for instance, which acts as a natural heating source, as well as an easy way to gather manure for agriculture, and creating spaces for various deities, gods, to reside inside the home, where they act as an anchor for Indigenous spiritual lives, but are no longer there. While many householders were eager to build in new styles, which would be safer in a future earthquake, they have also felt frustrated that their own well-honed skills in carpentry and masonry and the priorities that they had for the way they wanted their own living spaces to be were not always fully acknowledged. How can such existing knowledge and skills become valued as expertise on an equal footing with that of professionally trained engineers and other experts, such as financial managers and political representatives involved in this process? How can socially important considerations about religious practice and Indigenous lifeways be integrated into post-disaster reconstruction planning? How can local concerns about labor, which are often tied to changing patterns of mobility, be fully accounted for in such practices? How can the full range of resources, both material and social, that people have access to, be marshaled in the most effective manner to ensure that communities recover and, in fact, learn new skills and resource pathways to plan for the future along the way? Finally, how can the answers to such questions help inform our own policymaking, here in BC, more broadly in Canada, or elsewhere in the world? We are in a privileged moment now before disaster hits. In it, we have a lot to learn from Nepal and a lot to give as the country continues its own long-term process of reconstruction and transformation. Thank you.